to WCEG Network. We are the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak life into the community and we speak life into you. Log on onto WCEG Watch us live on your smart TV, on the Roku cable channel, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and now on Fanbase, Blue Sky, and Twitch. Search for WCEG and subscribe on all social media platforms. I'm your host, DrCassandra Wanzo, host of Mind Matters for the next hour. Download our free WCEG mobile apps. Say, Alexa, play WCEG Talk Radio. Listen to WCEG on any of our 12 podcast distribution platforms. Last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show host and guest, and not WCEG Media Enterprise. Thank you for your continued support. Good evening again. I'm your host, Dr. Wanzo. Tonight, we are exploring a question as old as humanity itself. What is the secret of happiness? Again, what is the secret of happiness? Is it success? Is it security? Or something deeper? Something rooted in our relationships with one another? Research and lived experience increasingly point to one powerful truth. Love, connection, and mental well-being are all deeply intertwined. In this hour, we will explore the secret of happiness, love, mental health, and the human connection. On Friday, March 20th, it will be International Day of Happiness. So in keeping with that theme, that's why we're doing the show on happiness. What is happiness? For centuries, philosophers, scientists, and spiritual teachers have asked the same question. What makes a happy life? Many people assume happiness comes from success, wealth, or achievement. Yet decades of psychological research tell a different story. I had a celebrity patient once who always used to say, more money, more problems. While material comfort can make life easier, it rarely creates lasting happiness on its own. Instead, study after study points to something much more fundamental: our relationships with other people. When we feel connected, valued, and loved, our emotional world becomes more stable. We cope better with stress, recover more quickly from hardship, and experience a deeper sense of purpose. But when connection is missing, the opposite can happen. Loneliness and isolation can take a serious toll on mental health. In fact, some researchers now describe chronic loneliness as a public health concern. So tonight, we're exploring a powerful idea. The secret of happiness may not be found in what we achieve, but how we connect. Let me say that again. The secret of happiness may not be found in what we achieve, but how we connect. Love, compassion, friendship, and belonging are not just emotional luxuries. They are essential ingredients of mental well-being. Understanding that connection may help us build stronger families, healthier communities, and more compassionate responses to mental illness. What is the science of happiness? Modern neuroscience has begun to explain something many people intuitively feel. Human beings are wired for connection. By nature, we're social beings. When we experience warmth, affection, and trust, the brain releases chemicals such as oxytocin and dopamine. These chemicals help regulate stress, improve mood, and strengthen feelings of safety. Positive relationships literally calm the nervous system. But the opposite is also true. Isolation and chronic loneliness increase stress hormones like cortisol. Over time, this can contribute to depression, anxiety, sleep disruption, and physical health problems. Researchers now recognize that social connection is one of the strongest predictors of emotional well being. Healthy relationships provide several important psychological benefits, such as emotional support during difficult times, a sense of belonging and identity, encouragement and accountability, opportunities for empathy and compassion. Connection also creates a very important coping skill, resilience. Connection creates resilience. People with strong support systems tend to recover more quickly from trauma, grief, and mental health challenges. In other words, happiness is not simply an individual achievement, it's something that grows within relationships. So, in other words, happiness is not simply an individual achievement, it's something that grows within relationships. Love is a protective factor. One of the most powerful discoveries in mental health research is that love and supportive relationships can protect people during times of psychological struggle. Family members, partners, friends, supportive communities often play a crucial role in helping people recover from mental illness. Support can take many forms: listening without judgment, encouraging treatment, offering practical help, reminding someone they are valued. For someone experiencing depression, anxiety, or another mental health condition, simply knowing that they are not alone can make an emotional, enormous difference. Compassion can reduce shame and help individuals feel safe enough and seek help. I'm going to, oh, and these connections strengthen hope, and hope is one of the most powerful forces in recovery. I'm going to turn it over to Shavett now.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Dr. Wanzo. That was great as you're talking about different support systems. And even when you're talking about, love and connection that are very powerful supports. And with mental illness, as we all know, sometimes that can be a little bit complicated. Relationships, the family dynamics can be complicated when you add the mental illness
Mhm.
component. And what do I mean by that? Well, certain conditions that they may have or maybe they're diagnosed with can affect the way they think. It can affect their mood, their perception of what's reality versus what's not reality, and even the way that they behave, the different behaviors that they display, and ways that different family members sometimes struggle with how to deal with that, how to understand their loved one who has a diagnosis of some type of a mental illness or a mental disorder. And I can give you some examples of that. You think about somebody who may be depressed. They're severely depressed. That's something that, we have to deal with. Others may have a diagnosis where they experience paranoia. They may have hallucinations. They may see things or hear things that other people don't see or other people don't hear. They hear it and see it themselves, but you as a family member or other people are not able to see and hear those things. So that's like hallucinations or even sometimes paranoia, constantly looking out of the window or constantly thinking people are watching them, things like that. Just basically general paranoia. They may also be experiencing some type of emotional instability. Life situations can really affect people in the way that they behave. For example, I have a high school friend of mine who experienced a very traumatic divorce, and even in her 40s, with that traumatic divorce, and they had one daughter together, it actually threw her into a mental illness, even in her 40s for the first time, because of the traumatic experiences that she had. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia in her 40s.
Wow.
It was that traumatic for her. So sometimes it's like life situations, emotional instability. Those things can create um, distance between people, the patient or and their loved ones that they deeply care about. And then as a family member, you're stuck sometimes. You don't know what to do. You don't know what to say. You don't know how to react or behave with your loved one. But as a family member, you may, feel a little bit confused. You may feel helpless. Even you may be fearful, depending upon the type of diagnosis that they have. You might have fear, of what is this person going to do. We've had when I say fear, we've had patients who have threatened loved ones. We have patients who, um, you know, threatened to burn the house down. We had one at a particular time, everybody in the house went to sleep, and they intentionally went to the stove, a gas stove, and turned the gas on. Well, we know that's carbon monoxide seeping in the house because the eye never came on fully, the eye on the stove, but that gas was seeping out. So sometimes there's that real fear, and you have real reasons to be fearful. So there's so many different components to that. And um, we know from dealing with the area that we work with mental health, that there's so many stigmas out there as it relates to this area. And stigma a lot of times does play a big role. Misunderstandings about mental illness. What are you supposed to think? How is it supposed to be? What is it supposed to look like? But those things can prevent you or prevent others from even speaking openly about it. What do I mean by that? Well, you may be living with a loved one that want to tell you they're hearing voices or they're seeing things, but they don't feel comfortable enough to you and share that with you. Or maybe you're not, you sense something in your spirit, in your soul, that something's not right, but you don't really, you don't feel comfortable, I guess I should say, in asking certain questions to that loved one. Um, for us, we know you can tread gingerly, but you also certain questions you have to ask. You know, do you sometimes see things or hear things, or you just have to ask them? And believe it or not, they'll share it with you. Most of the time, we found that they will, if you ask them, they will share with you. But by them not feeling comfortable with sharing with you, those type things can silence them to where they don't feel they can put themselves in isolation. Now they're probably, they could be in their room a lot with the blinds closed, no light coming in, not really wanting to be around people, totally isolating themselves. So recognizing the warning signs or early can really help you as a family member, as a loved one, help them to receive the proper care that they need before an actual crisis develops. because we want to prevent a full-blown crisis. They're not pretty. I've never been a part of a crisis that was, felt normal or okay. When they get to that point, they're at that point where they have to have an intervention, and a full-blown crisis has happened. But what kind of signs am I talking about? They may have signs of major changes in their behavior and how they act. They may be withdrawn from friends, from their family members, from their co-workers, and things of that nature. Sudden mood changes, like one minute they're happy or they're one way, and then it's like they turn around and do a 360, and all of a sudden now they're sad. It's like that, those mood changes, that or mood swings is what we call them. They may have problems actually functioning at work, functioning at school. They may have difficulties with that, getting along with other people, or even being around or near other people, still at school or work kind of to themselves. And maybe they have some type of expressions, especially if they're depressed. They may have expressions of hopelessness, or just, like we talked about earlier with the paranoia. But as far as you as family members, the earlier that you can get them some type of support, some professional care, some professional help, that can really make a really big difference in the outcome. Really, really big difference in how they're going to behave, them getting better, them getting treatment. And a lot of times there's that stigma of, I'm not crazy, I don't need help. You're thinking that I'm crazy kind of deal. But if we're talking about that connection piece, that love piece, and being what we call happiness, and when you're talking about mental health, that really, that communication, or different communities out there, us as a community is really going to play an important role in helping those individuals to get well. So we want to make sure that you don't frown upon them getting the proper care, the proper help, or seeking someone, or even going to have an assessment done. Because if you're thinking it, go have an assessment and let the expert tell you what the findings are. You know, they're the ones that need to give that professional diagnosis of what's going on with the person, and they do a complete, thorough assessment. They ask them lots of questions, but I can trust and believe and tell you that they will, actually figure out what's going on in them. But some of other supports that you can look into are, mental health services. Those are great. You have peer support programs that are out there and available to them. You have, also, you have, like, really, you as a family unit being educated, being knowledgeable about what's going on with your loved ones. Because when you understand their condition or their diagnosis and what they have or what they're dealing with, that is going to allow you to respond better to them, and be more knowledgeable, and not have that fear, because you're knowledgeable in what's going on with that person. So if they're depressed, you can conversate with them on depression. If they have schizophrenia, then you could talk with them about, okay, hearing voices that other people don't hear, or seeing things that other people don't see, or if they're experiencing paranoia, you can pinpoint more detailed on whatever it is that they're dealing with and they're going through. Other programs out there are just, that are community based. You can Google wherever your area is, and state and city that you're in, and lots of information will probably come up as it relates to your loved ones, and those that that are dealing with some type of illness, Dr. Wanzo. So lots of information, and hopefully you're grasping this, because it's something that we're really passionate about, in helping these individuals and getting the proper services that they need, the proper care that they need, and really having those conversations as we deal with what's happiness, what's true happiness. And if you're dealing and living with someone with a mental illness, then that happiness is going to be you getting them the proper care, them getting the proper treatment, and once they're treated, now they can start to stabilize and things will have, some sense of normalcy.
Okay, thank you, Shavett. That was awesome. So I thought I wanted to touch something that often people get confused. People often confuse happiness and pleasure.
Mhm.
So I want to go into what is the difference between happiness and pleasure. Meaningful happiness is meaningful happiness is a long-term internal state of flourishing and contentment, often achieved through giving, purpose, and connection. In contrast, pleasure is short-lived. It's a, it's an external and sensory experience, such as eating, buying items that offer immediate gratification, or sex. So here's some key differences between meaningful happiness and pleasure. As far as duration, happiness is long lasting and enduring, whereas pleasure is fleeting and temporary. What about the source? Happiness comes from within and often involves purpose, while pleasure is derived from external factors. What's the nature of the two? Happiness is linked to giving, helping others, and social connection. Pleasure is often associated with taking or self-gratification. Now, brain chemistry plays a role in both. Pleasure is driven by dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter that is associated with reward and addiction. Overstimulation of the dopamine pathways can lead to addiction. Let me repeat that again. Pleasure is driven by dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter associated with reward and addiction. Overstimulation of the dopamine pathways can lead to addiction. Whereas happiness, the brain chemistry associated with happiness is serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that's associated with mood regulation and contentment. So again, happiness is associated with serotonin. That's often when someone is depressed, some of the medicines we treat them with for depression are increase the level of serotonin in the brain. So serotonin is associated with happiness. Um, and pleasure is driven by dopamine, and which can lead to addiction. What's the difference in context? Pleasure can be experienced in both safe and threatening situations, but happiness occurs in a state of safety. So, in order to be happy, it has to be a state of safety. Some examples are pleasure includes eating a delicious meal, buying something new, shopping. Happiness includes reaching a personal goal, volunteering, or maintaining deep, loving relationships. To summarize the difference between the two again, with pleasure, the duration is short-term and fleeting. The focus is on external and taking. The neurotransmitter is dopamine. The goal is gratification and comfort, and the risk is addiction and tolerance. Whereas pleasure, the duration is long-term enduring. The focus is internal and giving. The neurotransmitter is serotonin, and the goal is flourishing and purpose, and there's no risk. So I thought that was really, interesting. I don't know if we have any feedback from our listeners or any questions or anything. I don't see anything. So, okay. Well, I guess so. This show doesn't have to be an hour. I guess I can just sum up then what we talked about. The secret of happiness, love, mental health, and the human connection. So as we come to the end of tonight's conversation, we return to a question people have asked for generations. What is the secret of happiness? We often search for it in achievement, in possessions, in the milestones that promise fulfillment. But again and again, life teaches us something quieter and far more profound. Happiness lives in connection. It lives in the friend who listens when the world feels heavy, in the family member who refuses to give up on someone struggling with mental illness. Happiness lives in the small acts of compassion that remind us we are not alone. As we heard so well from Shavett, mental health challenges can isolate people, but love has the power to reach across that distance. Sometimes the most important thing we can offer another person is simply our presence, our willingness to listen, to understand, and to care. Oftentimes in conversation, we're just not listening, but just thinking about what we're going to say next. But it's important to be willing to listen. That makes all the difference in helping another person. Tonight's conversation reminds us that the human mind and the human heart are deeply connected. And perhaps the secret of happiness is not really a secret at all. It is found in empathy, in community, in the courage to see one another fully and still choose kindness. Because in the end, happiness is not something we achieve alone. It is something we build together. Thank you for listening. Do you have any closing thoughts, Shavett?
Well, I would just add, just as a reminder, for those of you out there who have children, and just know that the age where mental illness may start to poke its head or show
Mhm.
its face, so to speak, is typically between the ages of 17, 18 to around 24.
Mhm.
Between that time frame, that age is where it may start to show itself, whereas you've never seen it before. So I just wanted everybody to be mindful of that. And, you know, as you get older, we have life, we have so many situations as we're lifing, so to speak. For anyone out there that is depressed, there are hotlines that you can call. But I would like to tell you, if you're
Mhm.
listening and you are someone who is deeply depressed, I'm glad that you're listening today, because you need to know that you're unique, you're special, you're one of a kind. If you look at your fingertips, there's no one else out there like you in the world, in the entire planet, that has your fingerprints. Why? Because it was designed that way. No one has your exact DNA. That's why you're unique, you're special. And the depression that you may be dealing with today is because we know that oftentimes there is something put inside of you that needs to be given to the world. The world may need to um, you have a gift inside of you, you have a purpose inside of you, and something somewhere out there doesn't want you to shine, doesn't want your purpose to be given to other people, to given to the world. But I'm here to tell you that you are special, you are unique, and there is something out there that you're supposed to do. And you can, just know that it is, the enemy is always at work,
Mhm.
and nothing needs to tell yourself that you this is something that you're depressed about. So you tell your mind and yourself that you're not depressed, that you are going to get better, that you are happy. And the mind and the brain is very tricky. It believes what you tell it. So as long as you say I'm depressed today, or I feel sad today, or I'm down today, the brain hears what you're saying. So in order to reverse that, you can go on Google, type in positive affirmations for depression, and start speaking life to yourself. Start speaking life to your mind. Because as I stated, the mind will believe whatever it is that you tell it. So I
Mhm.
just wanted to add that, Dr. Wanzo, for the listeners out there.
Thank you. That's so helpful, so helpful. I did want to share the number of the crisis line, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Because it used to be a longer number, now they've shortened it to 3 digits, 988. Again, that crisis line number is 988. There was a question about how the role that grief plays in mental health. Grief happens after a loss, and if it can become prolonged grief where it goes into months and months. At some point, it can progress into what we call a major depressive episode. So the grief can turn into depression.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it plays with mental health.
Mm-hmm. And if you're struggling with grief, maybe you've lost a loved one or lost a child or someone relatively close to you, then there are programs and groups out there for grief, specifically for grieving individuals,
Mhm.
that can really help you and give you that support that you need. And it may not be necessarily where it's something that you can deal with on your own and get out of by yourself. You just allow us to help you
Mhm.
to deal with that grief. So definitely seek your community support programs
Mhm.
for that for that grief, because but you definitely can deal with that and be okay.
Absolutely. Wow. I know this show may have been short, but it's been powerful. So I hope to our listeners that something has resonated with you, that you can take something that you can apply to your life or your loved ones, family members. So we wish you all the best. Love, peace, and joy.